Radiohead are one of the biggest bands in the world, and I'm sure I'm not alone in having imagined their exit music to a film as the closing track to many a personal emotional rollercoaster. It's shocking to think that their seminal album OK Computer was released 21 years ago. Yet the band have continued to work together and individually, exploring new musical challenges, including a number of film scores. But frontman Thom Yorke has resisted writing a soundtrack despite being approached to do the score for the movie Fight Club. Until now, that is. On the 16th of November, cinema goers will have their senses assaulted by soundscapes Thom has woven into the graphic gruesomeness of Luca Guadagnino's reimagining of the horror classic Suspiria. The film takes place in a dance studio in 1970s Berlin.
I guess I thought if I'm gonna do a score, it should be a horror film. That's easy, I just do lots of scary sounds. I do that for fun. But it was a lot harder than I thought, but that was the initial impetus. If I'm gonna do something like that, it should be a horror film. There's a freedom in there.
One of the things that's always struck me about your work is it is the intersection between music, but also the visual arts, performance, film. I was almost surprised you hadn't done a score before.
I resist taking on long projects and allowing yourself to just be a part of someone else's vision, something I wouldn't jump at normally. I was really intrigued by it, and Luca, he's really good with the way he conveys his ideas, and it sort of felt like a really empowering thing. Just resigning myself to someone else's requests. It was a way to allow myself to just go loads of places I wouldn't choose to go. Like him calling me up and telling me, darling, I need you to do a Sabbath in German. That's not an Italian accent. Sorry, Luca. I need you to do... No, that's not that either, because he's Sicilian. Things like that. And you're like, okay. And you find yourself doing something that you think could approximate it-ish. And there was lots of that, and I really enjoyed that. I guess if you spend your life from the age of God knows when I was a teenager, writing songs about how you feel or what you see and blah, 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 and then one day you wake up and go, okay, you tell me what to do, and I'll try and do it. It's quite nice. It's like a reset.
Taking other people's vision, it is difficult, I suppose, with something that is so fully formed and such a complete concept, that film. When you came in with songs, particularly with your own voice, were you cautious of that? There's only 3 tracks that have lyrics, aren't there, in the album?
Weirdly, because of the nature of the script, it's not really a normal horror film. I think it's a bit of a mistake to be called a horror film. It has extreme violence, and it's frightening, and it's disconcerting, but I don't really think it's necessarily a horror film. I think it's extremely sad. And it's a study of what collective energy can do. It's very, very dark. It's basically about people desperate to cheat death. That's what the whole film is. Using songs in it just seemed like a natural part of it, really. It was obvious that I was going to use my voice in some form.
The dance aspect really interests me.
It's a really important thing to me, the relationship between dance and music. So it was an opportunity to really try and tie the two together.
Volk is the piece that they're performing, this legendary dance piece.
Yeah.
Did you have a piece of music before? Was the dance choreographed?
That was a nightmare.
I can't imagine how you did that.
That was the thing that hooked me into it. That was the description at the beginning that he gave me. We met and he said, listen, I start shooting soon. And obviously you haven't got time to write something new for it, but we have a dance piece that Damien has put together. Do you think you could write to it retrospectively afterwards? And then he described it's supposed to be from, I think it was the 30s or the 40s, but it's moved on and now it's made electronic. So that's kind of all I had to go on. So not only was I writing to a dance piece that was already written, but then I was having to reference composers pre-war, but then update them and use 70s synthesizers. So it took me a few goes. Interestingly, I started off by trying to respond to all the movements in the dance and then discovered that that wasn't going to work and that wasn't the point. The tension between the way your mind ties up the movement with the music is not literal. The times when things do coincide, the times when they don't coincide, so much of it is a design accident. And then the genius move was Walter, the editor. he said, listen, don't put any percussion on it. I will just use the movement of the dancer's feet and the movement of the swishing of the weird red tassel. So if you think about it, that in itself is insane. All the percussive element is from the girl's feet and the breathing. That made it like a weird combination of things to watch. I found myself saying that I feel that making music can be like creating spells. The same with dance, it's creating a spell.
There's a layering throughout with different types of instruments, piano, vocals, flute, but also monastic chanting.
There was a lot of choral stuff. One of my favourite pieces was Choir of One, which is just me endlessly doing microtonal shifts with lots and lots of different voices. It took me months. It was super fun though. I'd have to stop every time I needed to take a breath. There's no breathing in it.
Goodness.
And it's 12 minutes long, so do the math.
How did you actually work? Did you get scenes sent to you that you looked at and thought, right, I'm going to use these sounds?
It varied. Initially, I did a lot of stuff just off the script without actually having any footage. And then there were certain sequences that they were trying to describe me the sort of thing they were looking for. But I would try not to work to picture too much because I felt it is kind of paralysing. You have to compose it as a piece of music that works on its own right and then adapt, put it back into place and see what doesn't work to pictures. The aesthetic of it was really steeped in the 70s and 1977 in Berlin. I love that period of music. At the age I was, that was the formative period for me. And the music I love is krautrock. One of the good things about that period was the self-belief that you could write a song and feel that you could change the world, or a sound, you make a sound on a synthesizer and feel like you really could mess with someone's head with that sound. From the original soundtrack, I did like the idea of repetition to the point where you're like, so I was sort of doing that when a melody is just too much, stop it now, stop it.
So the repetition almost like spells again.
Yeah, I mean, the essence of dance music is repetition, and the reason it pulls you in is because you get hypnotized. Something happens to your brain when you listen to it. So the playing is human, it's moving around, repeating. This sense of being lost in repetition is absolutely integral to music, and it's something I've always been really, really interested in. Even though early on with Radiohead, we were totally fascinated by the opposite. We were fascinated by sophisticated chord progressions, mode changes, different scales, things like that. Eventually we moved on. We were fascinated by the opposite, things going round and round and round and round and round. It made me realise how free I normally am in what I'm doing, and it made me realise how developed my relationships are with the people I normally collaborate with. I've been collaborating with these guys for like 20 years, and you literally sit in the studio and there's stuff you don't even bother saying. When I started working with them again recently after this finished, I just was laughing to myself because we barely say anything, but yet stuff happens. At the end of the day, you're like, yeah, that was it. What was what? Well, that's what we wanted to do. What do you mean? And it's, it's happened. It's already there. It's quite a precious thing.